Hey everybody. I'm hoping that this mic is what's recording me. I'm just going to go through a lot of the questions you guys have. I'll try to answer them as best I can. Let me just pull the questions up here. First off, I just want to say, I appreciate you guys being patrons of mine. Uh, it really means a lot. Um, it really helped when COVID hit. I had a lot of online clients drop because they weren't making any money and they didn't have any gyms to go to. So this definitely helped me keep creating content. It just helped me live my life. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the movie very, very briefly. The scope of this thing is pretty big. It's not just a couple of weightlifters with some haphazard ideas. Adam is the director. We are looking to raise $100,000 for what will eventually be a $1.162 million film. And that sounds like a lot, but that's about as low of a budget that you can possibly have trying to do the things that we want to do. The reason why we want $100,000 is to hire a casting agent, take care of legal fees, and a couple other production reasons, but I'm not as much the numbers guy. That's more Adam. So if you want to help out at all in any way, go to our Kickstarter. Just go to kickstarter.com and search The Weight. What's cool is now there's a bunch of tiers and different things you can get. You can get a t-shirt. You can get a t-shirt and hat. You can get a bunch of different things. But what we're doing now is we have different sponsorship opportunities as well. We have something with Onyx straps. They're incredible. And Caffeine and Kilos. Right now, if you put in a donation of $5 or more, you can redeem $5 from Caffeine and Kilos, and you can also redeem $5 from Onyx. If you put in $200, you will get the t-shirt, the hat. I think that's like the package deal, but then Onyx will give you a pair of straps. So that's probably the best bang for your buck option. But let's get started. So there's my piece on that. Questions, here we go. I've got 39 questions to go through here, and I'm going to answer every single one of them. Just loading them up here. This is taking a while. All right, here we go. Brendan O'Connor. Should I do a peaking phase after completing the two-step loading blocks? Yes, absolutely. The two-step loading blocks are very good blocks leading into a peaking phase because you're ready to kind of take on that. The adaptations have already been made at those lower weights, and you're now ready to start kind of preparing for single lifts. The idea with the peaking phase is that you're trying to snatch and clean and jerk as much as possible. You're not trying to take on a more of an adaptive stimulus. Logan Davenport says, "Hey Zach, over the past couple of weeks, I've been having a difficult time with some weird fatigue in my biceps and forearms when I front rack and attempt to do any sort of jerks. Nothing has changed in my training aside from slightly widening my grip." I have you had any experience with this? I have had a lot of experience with this. Typically, what's going to work with joint problems is certain types of training that might offset those issues. Grip work will help a lot with the biceps and the forearms and the elbows. Grip work, grip work, grip work. So plate pinches, plate pinch and walks, even something like God, what are those things? Farmer's carries. Those aren't as much grip, but they're loaded in your hands. Things where you're not holding a hip hook grip and you're really using your grip. That's going to help a lot with the biceps and the elbows and the forearms. But also, you know, I'm not entirely. I don't believe too much in just like prescribing exercises to help out with certain things, and that being the answer. Like, oh, I did grip work, and all of a sudden I got better. Well, the grip work could have helped, but it also could be the fact that you just did less work overall in the front rack. Sometimes when you inflame something hard, enough, just giving it a break and still trying to train and still trying to move around, that's when things can really get better. So that was a good question, Logan. Jackson S. I have a home gym. If I want to go all in on weightlifting to see how far I can go, should I do two-a-days? If so, I'm not a beginner lifter, but I'm a beginner to weightlifting. How would you recommend I transition? So if you're a beginner to weightlifting, the most important thing to understand is that the movement is always going to be the most important thing. And because it's quite easy to maximize your strength. I mean, we find the strength movements, and we can just throw adaptation at you, and that's how it happens. It's really difficult to say do more weightlifting if the weightlifting that you're doing is shitty. So if you want to go all in on weightlifting, it's more going to be about trying your best to live the lifestyle of a weightlifter. And something that Max says to me a lot, he's like, we're not looking just for, excellent strength athletes or excellent athletes. We're looking for excellent weightlifters. We are looking for exceptional weightlifters. If you watch some of these elite weightlifters, their sessions from start to the end, they're practicing. They're practicing their craft. It's not like we're searching for a stimulus. In order to do two-a-days, the idea is that you want so much volume that you can't possibly fit it in a certain time frame. So you would have to split it up into two different sessions within one single day. I don't believe that that is going to be the case for a newer weightlifter. Something I can say though is that two-a-days, there's many different ways to think about two training sessions. Something that I realized was like my two-a-days, I'm not killing myself if I ever do a two-a-day. And I really do like to do them. Something I might do is like get into the gym in the morning, and I might do a slightly heavy-ish back squat. Maybe something like that. Something, like RPE 7 single back squat. Then I'll put the bar on the floor, and I will snatch up to about 70% for 3 to 5 singles. I might do some complexes. Then I'll move on to clean and jerks, and I might do 60 to 65% on clean and jerks. All in all, the session from front to back with the warm-up is going to be at most an hour and a half. As far as pure work goes with my squats, snatches, and clean and jerks, might be 45 minutes. So that would be session one. Session two is like, okay, what do I want to accomplish in this day? That's where I can go heavier snatches. I can do more adaptive type of squatting. I can do sets of 5, sets of 3, things that where I have a goal in mind as far as adaptation goes. That would be the best way to do two-a-days. So it's like your first session is just waking you up. You're practicing. You're moving well. Second session is where you go all in. Jackson. Okay, that was Jackson S. Thank you so much. Wilhelm Jernspets. I'm feeling lower back pain when back squatting. I know the issue is butt wink, and the way to fix that is through keeping the core tight. However, I still have so much pain that I can't move the day after a heavy squat session. Well, Who says that you have to squat heavy? You know, I mean, you're going to end up squatting heavy, right? It's just the nature of training. But how does that parallel your actual training? Are you squatting heavy just to get it done, or are you squatting it heavy to supplement the weightlifting that you're doing? If you have lower back pain from squatting heavy, what is the line of you not squatting heavy? And does it not hurt when you do front squats? Does it not hurt when you do overhead squats? Does it not hurt when you do this, this, this? There's so many different things that we can do besides just back squatting heavy, whatever that means for you. So for instance, I'll use myself as an example. If my back starts to hurt a little bit when I start getting over 200 kilos in the back squat, who says I can't do 120 kilos in the back squat for 5 sets of 5 nice paused clean reps? Something where I can control every muscle fiber in my body and get a nice stimulus in my legs. Who says that won't benefit me in some way and that I can't get a heavy stimulus elsewhere? So the idea is more just taking a look at your training and finding out and pinpointing why do you need this heavy session and how can I supplement it some other way? Other things, if you're having butt wink issues, you could look at, well, what is your hip and knee and ankle positioning like in the squat? Are you comfortable in the low end ranges in the squat? Do you not butt wink? And what weight do you start to butt wink? These are all loading issues. They're not actual biomechanical issues. It's not that the squat is causing you the pain. It's the loading. There's so many other factors. So I would just take a look at your program, and if it calls for a certain heavy back squat that is going to hurt your back, you probably don't need it. So that's my answer to that one. I think there was a reply to that one as well. Someone else. Yeah. So Nishal said that he had the same problem and he started doing core and hip strength and mobility. Everything's going to work. Like, mobility is going to be the key in a lot of these things. If you're a weightlifter, you have to understand that this is an extremely mobile sport. And if there's ever a point in time where something breaks or something misses the mark as far as positioning goes, it's likely that you're going to end up injury if you don't address it. So basically what I had said before, it's loading, it's a bunch of different things. But thank you for the question. Michael Arroyo says, I'm having trouble on meeting the bar on both turnovers. It seems like I'm trying too hard to get under the weight faster, which is causing crash on both my clean and jerk and my snatch. Any advice on movements that you would recommend to help me meeting the bar? One is going to be a proper clean pull or a proper snatch pull. And not just a snatch pull as in snatch deadlift or clean pull as in clean deadlift. Learning how to make contact and staying up and using your arms to manipulate the bar after contact. That's going to be called a high pull. A lot of times people think high pull, they make contact and then they kind of have this really slacked arm and they just kind of shrug and the bar yanks them down. Contact and float the bar. Feel it in your hands. And you're going to have to do this with really light weight to start. What you don't want to do is make contact, feel it in your hands as you duck down. So kind of like the panda pull style. For you, I would not suggest that. I would suggest making contact and really trying to use the arms to get that bar up. There's a lot of different demos of this. Alexei Tarakti has a great demo on the clean. I think it's called the clean pull. I have one about the clean pull, and I address this exact thing. Other than that, you can do tall snatch and tall clean. Those are going to be always best bang for your buck drills. Wilhelm again says, I power snatch more than I snatch. How do I improve at getting under the bar? Well, how comfortable are you in the bottom position? And if you think that you are very mobile and you are very comfortable in it, then you need to start finding the factor in which what doesn't allow you to drop under the bar. Typically, when people start thinking about explosive hip and explosive movement of the feet, they can't retract their hips. So if you think about it, say this is my hips, my shoulders would go out that way, knees here, and the bar would be here. My hips are here. In order to extend, the hips have to come forward. A lot of times people extend so hard with the hips coming forward that it's hard to get them back and down into a position where they can squat. One of the best drills for this is just a no foot snatch, because their feet are locked to the floor. So their natural tendency when you lock your feet in the floor is to not let the hips overextend too far, because you're literally not going to be able to move the feet to adjust. So you want the hips to be able to come in and be able to drop back down underneath. So the no foot snatch will be your best friend for that. Nishal asks, how do I do full cleans and full snatch? I have problem getting depth. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. How do I work on this problem? Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing, no foot snatching, a lot of these things, but you guys need to understand that, like, he says at heavier weight, it doesn't seem to work. I promise you, I will say this over and over again. That's a loading issue. That's a loading problem, right? You need to understand that in order to get better at something, the actual end result needs to be out of your head. And the end result being the amount of weight on the bar needs to be gone out of your head. Because if you think about the weight on the bar and the accomplishment of the rep, all of the other factors are not as important. And when you're starting, all of the other factors must be the most important. And the accomplishment, basically the amount of weight that you lift, given the bounds of the lifts, which are the snatch and the clean and jerk, that has to be subservient to the way that you move. So when we're in a world of of CrossFit, where it's like, here's the rule: bar goes from the floor to over your head in one fluid motion without stopping anywhere. That's what we would call a snatch, right? Now, that's fine. So when you do a snatch, it doesn't matter how it looks. As long as you follow those guidelines, you have completed the rep. That is the opposite of how you should think as a beginner. You should look at the completion of the rep is nowhere near as important as completing the rep the proper way. So it literally should not count in your head unless you do it the right way. So it doesn't matter if you did it, because if you did it wrong, it doesn't count. That's the only thing you can do. So in order to, so you're saying when it gets heavy, I can't do it the right way. Well, if it gets heavy and you don't do it the right way, you didn't do it. That's the mindset you have to have. So what's the line at where you do it the right way? And we can kind of flirt with that line. We can go, all right, let's do 10 sets of 2 here, or whatever it may be. And then the next week, maybe we add 2.5 kilos and we try to do it again. That's how you load properly. And it's typically going to be within that 70 to 80% range. Alistair McDiarmid. Alistair McDiarmid. For obvious reasons, I've been lifting in my apartment living room recently, and 3 months of no foot snatches and cleans, push jerks have done great things for my technique. Now that my gym is reopening, I can't move my feet in the snatch. Well, I don't know that moving the feet in the snatch it's that important, but things you can do is just like really focus on changing speed. Like put all of the emphasis on explosion. Typically when we're doing no foot snatches, it's hard for people to kind of change tempo and change speed. So when they get to the hip, they kind of just brush off the hip and fall underneath, when you can be controlling and then really snapping the bar off the hip. That really will help you finish the lift. And if you want to move the feet, you can always think about snatching to plates, like just very small plates. You stand with a slightly narrower grip, or sorry, narrower width of your feet, and then you try to land on the plates to the outside. That usually helps people, but again, it's going to be a change of speed. Rodney Colon Reyes, how do you think that an athlete that was in the middle of a strength phase but gets injured should return to training? In my case, it was hyperextension of the right knee caused by an impact to my shin. Coming up on 2 weeks of rest and no stability lost in the leg. So, how do you come back to training? It's very simple. You should be perfect. That's it. Squat perfectly, snatch, clean and jerk perfectly, and just very slowly build the muscle back up. You should be looking for muscle activation. So in your squats, they should move like air. I mean, and you should really be trying, when you are feeling fatigue from like the muscular fatigue, not because the weight of the bar is heavy. When you're feeling that fatigue, you should focus even harder on trying to maintain positions. So, high volume squat sessions are definitely going to help you out as long as the weight is extremely light and you're going for that muscular fatigue, and holding positions in that muscular fatigue is what's going to bring you the results the quickest, but it's not quick, if that makes sense. Something that you shouldn't do is try to think about your old maxes and try to hit those. Like, give yourself 6 weeks of building the legs back up, building all the things back up, then try and enter back into maybe harder training. Patrick Legator, we'll call him that. Thoughts or advice on returning to training after the stay at home? This is great. This is the same question. Yeah. How should someone? Okay, so it's the same question. Returning to training from staying at home, movement's got to be perfect. Building positional like hitting all your positions when you're under fatigue is going, and moving well, not grinding squats, not bouncing them super hard. That's going to be my biggest suggestion there. But approaching nutrition is weighing yourself every day. And a lot of people say it doesn't matter what's on the scale. It's like, yeah, the number on the scale does matter, because how the hell else are we supposed to get any sort of intelligence on what our maintenance or or maintenance or surplus or deficit calories are going to be? If your goal is to gain weight, make sure you're eating properly. Eat healthy. Don't eat like a dick is something that I always say. But maybe you add in some calories and you weigh yourself every single day. Every day. Morning and night if you can. Firmin Fernandez, what are your thoughts on ass to grass squatting? And where do you stand on thigh contact versus hip contact in the clean? I prefer thigh contact in the clean. But I got to tell you, like, so many people resort to getting the bar off the hips. I see it more and more and more. I like thigh contact in the clean because it's basically what the Soviets taught. The power position is actually lower in the clean. And if you're able to use your upper back properly and your back and your arms, you can properly make contact and go through that power position. What ends up happening with a lot of people is their legs and their hip extensors, they get stronger than the rest of their body, so they can't control the bar after contact. So what do? They just kind of get that bar into the hip. They make a nice contact, and it gives them the time they need to get under the bar. So I would say I personally just like thigh contact much more. Ass to grass squatting, it's like, I mean, it typically it can help. It can, what matters is usually you want to show that your hip crease can get below the knee crease for weightlifters. That's something I would say. And a lot of times weightlifters, they want to get so vertical that they just shove their knees so far forward that their hip crease actually is higher or just in line with their knee crease. I don't have any issues with the knees going forward. I'm not one of those people. But I do have an issue with the knee going forward and then not being able to use any of the hip at all. I like the knee to go forward, but the hip to be below the knee crease. So any way that you can squat like that and maintain proper posture is good for me. Derek Ruse says, couple quick questions. How long is too long of a session? I'd say 2.5 hours. How do you keep your hands from getting ripped to shreds during longer sessions? I use straps for a lot of snatches, but my hands don't get ripped really from anything. I've been weightlifting, like, I don't know if you guys can see how brutal my hands are. Like, this is just purely calloused. Yeah, I just, I'm lucky, I guess. My hands just do not get ripped up at all. Like this callus right here, let's see if you guys can kind of see it, is like, it's actually insane. People shake my hands and they're like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And there's also a callus right here too. But yeah, you know, you don't want to be training too long because at that point, like, you're not really getting anything done. A lot of times you can start working on your fitness more and trying to get more done quicker. Also, you know, move properly. I say that probably 15 times every time I do one of these videos. I use straps for a lot of snatches. When I do complexes, I use straps for every pulls. All pulls I wear straps. I think it's stupid to try and hook grip pulls for reps. I'm not working on my hook grip. I'm working on everything else. So elbow wraps are not allowed in competitions. He's asking, are elbow wraps and sleeves allowed in competitions? They are not. Do you take pre-workout or advise it? I do take pre-workout. I just like to have probably like 300 milligrams of caffeine, and I'd like to have that probably 30 minutes before training. And I really like to get really warm when I train. If you guys ever saw me train, like for a session, like I really don't stop moving. And I try to limit the amount I look at my cell phone. So I'll do 3 reps with the bar, rest 30 seconds to a minute, 3 reps with the bar, rest 30 seconds to a minute, 3 reps with the bar. Put 50 on. This is for snatches. Put 50 kilos on, put the 15s on, so it's 50 kilos. I'll do 3 reps there, rest 30 to 60, 3 reps, rest 30 to 60, 3 reps, rest 30 to 60. Then I'll put the 25s on, so it'll be 70 kilos. I'll do 2 reps, rest 30 to 60, 2 reps, rest 30 to 60. Then I'll go to 90. Then I'll do singles from there on out. I'll do a single at 90, rest 60 to 90 seconds, a single at 100, rest 60 to 90 seconds. And then I'm typically going to be working from anywhere from 105 to 125. And that's where I start to move. But if you guys didn't notice, that was over 36 reps before I even got to my starting weight. And those 36 reps are going to take me about 10 minutes. Yeah. So we move. Like I try to move and I try to get sweaty and I try to get, like, there needs to be some intention here. I'm practicing. I'm not sitting on my ass being a lazy fuck. So I tend to pull too fast in the first pull. I've been counting 1, 2, then pull. This is a good strategy. Yeah, it's slowing down the first pull if you're a beginner will always be a good strategy. Always. So you can think 1001, 1002, extend. It might be 1001, extend. It might be, whatever. But yes, slowing down the first pull and trying to maintain position is always going to help. Curtis Ballard says, how was your recovery from your meniscus repair? I just had mine done and weightlifting seems a million miles away. Has it affected your lifting right now? had my meniscus repaired, and then it tore again when I was playing lacrosse, and then I had that piece taken out. That was so long ago that I don't really know that it factored into my weightlifting at all. Sometimes I get a little bit of arthritic pain, but lately nothing. And it's because I really take care of my mobility. I always fight for my range of motion in my right knee specifically. So I will sit in the bottom of a squat for 5 to 10 minutes every single day, and I'll focus on compressing my knee as much as I can. So if this was my femur, or like basically my hamstrings, and this was my calf, I really try to compress that in the bottom position of a squat. I don't care what the pain is like in the knee because I'm not loading anything. It's purely just like so I can get that range of motion. And then when I lift, I can hit the range of motion as I go through my training. So for you, it's always going to be, again, like I've said for the other guys who are returning to training, building up the full range of motion and the strength in the full range of motion. It might start with a body weight squat, then you put in a kettlebell so that you can go and load that position. But again, it's going to be about burning, getting that burning in the muscles, and then getting that range of motion back. Justin Lee says, how much emphasis should I place on the eccentric portions of the lifts? For example, from an overhead jerk position, how does slowly lowering it into the front rack position carry over to the technical aspects of the lift? I would say for the jerk specifically, when you lock out and you want to lower the bar, you always want to start the movement by slowly bending the elbows. And obviously you can't do that all the way down with the weight that you jerk, or else you're not split jerking that much. But you want to be able to lower it slowly and then catch it. Not just go from here, boom, right? Slowly, elbows, 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 then jump up and catch it. That's how you kind of re-catch the jerk. That actually does carry over, but mainly because you're just doing more work in this position and this position. I don't think that weightlifters do enough work overhead. They just simply don't. So it does matter to be able to slow it down just for aesthetics. I mean, you don't want to slam yourself down with the bar, but I do actually think it'll carry over. As far as eccentrics in the squats, they're incredibly effective. Eccentric squats are incredibly effective, but remember, I'm always looking for hip crease below the knee. And if you start kind of slamming the bottom and really using that, it just starts looking bad, and it doesn't carry over to any sort of strength gains. You're just using too heavy of weights. So that helps in the squats. In the pulls, I think it helps tremendously. So if you ever want to just add in some eccentrics, like I don't know if there are too many coaches that are going to get mad at you for doing that, as long as the concentric phase or the actual lift itself is fast. But good question. That was from Justin Lee, but this one's from Jason Lee. Hi, Zach. Just wondering if you or any of the other JTS lifters have experienced wrist pain during the snatch accessories such as the snatch balance, snatch grip, push press, overhead squat, but not in the actual snatch. Wrist pain, and I've gone over this one before, a lot of it stems from people just, when they get the bar overhead, they're kind of like allowing their base, they don't have a base of support in their traps to mid-back. So what they're doing is they're just kind of stacking everything and then just letting it push them. And then they're very passive throughout this, and their wrist ends up just getting smashed by the bar. What I found is when you're warming up, at least, and you're not going to be able to catch everything with a vertical wrist, okay? But it helps to have less of a tilt back when you're warming up and when you're practicing, because what you'll notice is when the bar's here and you sit back like this and then the bar kind of starts coming here, you're really inactive in your back. If you can kind of pull your scaps back here, right, and then get your hands up like that, you can already feel, and if you guys are watching, you can try this yourself, right? If you're like that, see how you're like this position? You don't feel that mid trap really working. You kind of pull it back like this and then stack the wrist and punch up. You can really feel the mid back working. The more that you do that, it should be lighting up. It should be lighting up on fire. And the more that you can do that and feel those muscles burning, the better. And I promise you, your wrist pain will go away after a while. But it really takes from like building the base of support rather than building it on the ligaments. That's typically, and this right here is always where the pain is on wrist pain, especially for snatches. Or sorry, that overhead position. And the reason why you're getting wrist pain in those overhead positions is, it could be the weight is too heavy, even though it might be super light compared to what you snatch. Focus on having more wrist control and then more back control. Put the mind muscle connection, put your brain in your back, feel that muscle working and try to hold it as you squat. You're squatting, you're moving through the squat, but you're actually focusing on this area right here. That is going to help you tremendously. Rahaz Omar says, how does one learn to get better at pulling through the quads and riding down to the front squat and clean instead of pop and dropping? I would say think more about pressing the toes into the ground. And what you can do is, if this is my body and I'm grabbing the bar here, you can start to kind of lean over the top of the bar. Like I call it the Michael Jackson lean, putting more pressure forward on the toes. Then you're going to take your breath, and when you set, you can press those toes down. And when you think about it, in the squats, if your knees are forward a little bit more and you're pressing the toes down, you're going to use the knee extensor or the quads more. And that will coincide if your shoulders are over as well. So it's like your shoulders and your knees need to be over, but then you need to pull up with your chest. This is when you're pulling. You need to pull up with your chest, and that will apply pressure downwards, with the toes kind of leading the way and gripping it. A lot of times people pull, and when they get to the knees, the toes kind of flare up like that. And then the rest of their pull is not connected at all. Jose, wow, I've got quite a few more questions, but we're going to make our way through this because you guys paid me the money. And Jose Gomez, your video with Megan, the powerlifter chick, you mentioned the biggest problem powerlifters had is the change of speed as the bar passes your knees. What's the best way to work on this? The best way to work on changing speed when the bar passes the knees is to change speed when the bar passes the knees. And I know that's not the answer that you're looking for, but it's a loading thing, right? So keep your eyes up. A lot of powerlifters, whenever the bars, they want to be rounded forward and they want to keep their eyes down. Eyes directly forward. Slow off the floor. Slow past the knees. Explode, right? Like, there is no weight that you have to lift, okay? There's no weight. I'll say it again. It's a loading issue. What line, at what point can you change speed? Okay, good. Let's change speed. Let's work on that. If we add 5 kilos, can you still change speeds? No, you can't. You haven't done enough work at 5 kilos less then, right? It's always going to be a loading issue. Outside of this, the stuff in the hang is really helpful. But it's just more reps, more repetition, learning how to pull the bar in towards you. Powerlifters, they're always behind the bar. They're just always behind it, always behind it. In weightlifting, if you're behind the bar when you make contact, you have effectively taken yourself out of the lift. When we pass our knees, we are we're not even really close to the finishing of the lift. When you pass the knees in the deadlift, it doesn't matter what happens. Just shoot your hips forward and just fight for life. And then once it gets to the hips, the lift is over. So what we have to do is learn how to maintain that shoulder position over the bar. And I mean, changing speeds, it's just like if I was your coach, I'd be like, nope, you didn't change speeds. And then you would do it and you wouldn't change speeds. And I say, nope, you didn't change speeds, right? Like it's hard to prescribe a drill for everything. And I'm not trying to be difficult. And I really do appreciate your question, Jose. But you do have to just like, you just have to find the weight that allows you to move well and move well for a while. And a lot of powerlifters don't really get this because powerlifting, it's like I teach you how to squat and you squat like Bambi legs, you have no proprioception. That proprioception gets developed in like a week. And then from there, all we do is just load you just more weight, more weight, more weight. And it's fucking awesome, right? Sadly, that's just not how weightlifting works. You know, your proprioception will get better and you're likely going to go up, but you're always going to strive for technical proficiency even as you go through your lifting career. In powerlifting, you just kind of lock in your technical proficiency, and then it's never really something that you practice, like the movement pattern. You know, you might put some work into it, but it's nowhere near the amount of technical prowess and technical practice necessary for weightlifting. But good question, Jose. And I know I probably gave you the answer that you didn't want, but I got to move on. Kevin Kobashigawa said, hi, Zach, I have a problem in the jerk. When I drop and lock my arms, the bar still has upward momentum. That makes my arms pull the bar down. Okay. A simple tip, make sure you're landing with your back foot first. That is, you have to do that. Back foot hits, front foot hits. Boom, 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 boom. If you're not doing it right, doesn't count, okay? Secondly, focus more on the drive phase than the dip phase. I think a lot of people, they take the breath in and then they dip really fast. When you're learning or when you're, whatever, if it's lighter weight and weight that you can manage, control the dip and explode on the drive. Back front. I promise you your timing will be better. Forget about the dip speed. Just all you have to do is control the dip, feel the quads, and drive upward. Then you think back front, back front, back front. Never the other way around. Hung Win said, can you post an example of a program that prescribes back squat and front squat in percentages of the clean? I have put in a bunch of programs with front squats in percentages of the clean. Back squats in the percentages of the clean, I'm not sure I would do. I don't think I would ever do that. Back squats I'm always going to give you an RPE value for the most part. Sometimes I'll give percentages if it's more like volume based. I don't think like RPE is worth it if you're, doing things with like rest intervals and things like that. But front squats, as far as clean goes, I love doing that. So one of the things that I love doing is like, here's your clean workout. Maybe build from 75 to 85% for 5 sets of 3 in cleans. Then you're going to take the above weight and you'll do 5 additional sets of 3 front squats, and you're going to try to move them as fast as possible. If those are easy, maybe you can add some certain weight. So basically all we're doing is adding on to that clean session with more front squats. We're trying to build fatigue in the clean via the front squat. I wouldn't do that in the back squat. Wilhelm, I'll answer your question quickly, but we should only really allow, one question per. And if you have multiple, I'm okay with answering multiple. Just try to like bunch them together. I just completed a strength phase. What should I do next? Probably go into some sort of a peaking phase and see if you can get some new numbers, some new max snatch and new max clean and jerk. Jesus Fonseca or Jesus, I don't know which one you go by, How do you get rid of an early arm bend in the snatch? What are some possible causes? Any drills to fix it? Um, Typically, I think the early arm bend in the snatch is just kind of an impatience thing. What you can do really quickly is think about taking your knuckle and pulling it underneath. So what'll end up happening to the elbow is that it'll actually stay locked when you pull your knuckle underneath like this. So as you're about to make contact with the hips, you can kind of pull it under this way, rather than trying to bend and pull it into your hips. But typically that's going to be more of a patience thing. Arm bend in the snatch is tricky. It is tricky. It's one of those things where, like, I know you want to accomplish certain things and I know you want to lift certain heavier weights, but you have to be conscientious about it. Loose arms off of the floor. And I really do think being more patient, just wait longer. Like, when you pass the knees, you don't have to make your move to explode. Right? You can wait a little bit longer. Make that intentional decision to wait even longer to then make your move. Because what you're doing is, if you're used to bending the arms, when that bar passes the knees, you're now shortened the distance that the bar needs to travel to get to the contact point. If you lengthen the arms, you don't have that shortened distance anymore, and now your timing is off because you're so used to going early. So if you wait a little bit longer, you can allow yourself to have longer arms. Daniel Goodwin asks, do you need a super weak, technically inefficient, sloppy, and incredibly handsome extra for the weight? I'll do it for airfare and 4 fried chickens. There's some good humor here. Daniel, we do not need a super weak, technically inefficient, sloppy, and incredibly handsome extra. I don't know what the deal with like extras is going to be. For the competition scenes, we have elite weightlifters coming in for this. But every movie needs extras. Like, there's a diner scene, and if you want to be in the background of that, you can gladly be an extra. But I highly doubt that Adam and I will be flying people out for that, even though you are very handsome, which I very much believe. But Daniel, we will let you guys know. How about that? We will let you guys know about the opportunity to be an extra in this film as soon as we can. But we cannot put the cart before the horse here. We need this $100,000, which we're kind of on the way. I mean, right now we have $53,000. And supposedly the way that Kickstarter works is that the last week people just start sending money because it makes the front page. And we do have a couple investors who are going to put in $10K, which is fucking amazing. I don't want to jinx it. I think I did that wrong. There we go. I'm not religious. I don't even know why I'm fucking doing that. But yeah, let's move on. Justin Manippus says, psychology questions. What is the ultimate motivational song mantra that gets you ready for your heavy lifts? I can tell you my mantra, but I'm trying to think of this song. My favorite song is going to be by Gojira. It's called The Gift of Guilt. That one gets me fired up. Another one is by Explosions in the Sky, and it's called The Only Moment We Were Alone. It's a very good song. The last movement in that song is just gets me fired up. But I don't like to really listen to music when I'm about to do a heavy lift. Like, I don't think the music does that much to me. It's more about, my mantra. And I say this every time I compete. I always end up worrying about the first attempt that I'm going to take. And I always end up thinking about, like, oh, well, if I hit this, what do I do then? And then what do I do this? What do I do that? It's like, the best sessions that I have, there is no past and there is no future. There is only this hyper real, intensely real version of the present. Like stepping up to the bar, like, good job, step, 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 stop. Hand, hand. Okay, eyes up, take the breath, and lift. That was 50 kilos. Good job, Zach. Sit down. Step, 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 step. Sit. Think about nothing because nothing's happening. It's like literally the only thing that matters is the biomechanical present that I can control. And it honest to God helps me every single time I compete. And a lot of times when I lift, it's like people are like, "Oh, how are you feeling?" It's like, I don't know how I feel because I don't have the weight on the bar that I need to have. I know how I just moved. It was either good or bad, but what I'm doing now is I'm going to go up and do the next rep. And it's going to be the one that I focus on directly right now in front of my face. That has literally been the greatest tool to my success right there. Just that hyper focus on the very present actions I can take. Technical cue. I can slide or stomp my feet aggressively up to 80%. After 80%, my feet refuse to come off the ground and my heels either barely come off or do not move at all. Well, I would begin to look into how fast and how easy and how technically well you're moving 80% plus, so like 80 to 90%. And that's usually going to be the shape that you're in. It doesn't really matter what shape I'm in, whether I've been CrossFitting or if I'm weightlifting to the best of my ability. I'm going to be able to complete right around 125 kilos, let's say 120 to 125 kilos in the snatch. Now, the ease at which I do those things will reflect my training. And the ease at which I do those things will determine the amount that my feet move, the control I have on the bar, the amount of, so for you, it's like, well, how good are you past 80%? And I would argue to say that probably not that great if your feet are just staying there and you're just barely catching. And it's also like, if your feet don't move, it's probably not that big of an issue if you're not missing lifts, but what I would say is try your best to have more command on the bar with those weights. So like today I did 85% for 10 singles in a row, no misses. And I moved my feet for every one of those reps. And I typically have that. I slide my feet, but I felt like I was in control of every rep because I'm in better shape than I was before. If I tried to do that and I wasn't in very good shape, my feet might be stuck in the mud. And those are the certain things. But I would say, think about it more in training, right? Your 80% is right at the line of where things start to become problematic technique wise. But that's also when you get over 80% is when you start to be closer towards that peaking phase. 85, 90, 95%. You can only touch those things so many times per year if you're an efficient lifter. I hope that answers your question. Based Jerry says, "Hey, my name Jeff. I was wondering how a beginner lifter should cue the extension in the snatch and the clean. I overthink it and notice my extension looks kind of different at times. I jump versus slide." I would say, guys, we're getting a lot of the same questions. My feet don't come off the ground. There are drills you can do, but it's always going to be like, it's hard to say. Like, you're by yourselves in training. So if I'm there coaching you, the way that I coach people is like we're ultra aware of like the complete and utter control that we have over the lift. Like when I was training with Dylan Cooper, if we stood up from a lift and took 2 steps forward that were micro lifts, like micro steps, like we would catch, stand up, and when you know how you're leaning forward a little bit and you kind of go step, step, we would be like, that was a shitty lift. That was shit. And we would get really upset about it because like we want to be exceptional weightlifters. And so as a coach, that's kind of the lens is like, again, we're not competing. So nothing you lift is going to impress me. But doing it the right way and the way that I say to do it, that will impress me because then you have command, you have control. As far as extension goes, remember the hips, if they come forward too fast and too hard, it's going to be hard to retract them into a proper bottom position. So your hips need to kind of come up and be able to pointedly come back down. That's why extension, when we go extend really hard with the hips and we throw them forward, that's when our, all of our mechanics can kind of fall apart. So, think about no hook, no foot, just no foot snatches, certain things like that, certain drills. But again, it's going to be command over those percentages that's going to help you throughout. Marty Cunningham, have you ever seen a lifter jump? It's another question about jumps, moving the feet. Oh, so Marty has another issue. Their feet are excessively moving. To fix excessive movement of the feet, no foot snatches for sure. Hang snatches as well. Hang snatches, block snatches, no foot variations, just more and more reps where you're learning how to take the top end of the lift and control it. So many people think when we get past the knees, it's just explode and lose the bar. And then hopefully in all of that mess, you can just catch it. But really, it's explode and command and control and know exactly where that bar is. Dominic, I'm doing now the step loading. Should I change my maxes during the phases or keep it up the whole program? The step loading is just 8 weeks long. So he's asking when the next phase of step loading will be out. It's just 8 weeks long. I would go on to a peaking phase after that. You can change your maxes if the weight feels incredibly easy, or you can just kind of go up in weight, but you have to move well. That's the point of step loading, is that it's almost frustrating and painstaking how similar all of the workouts are. You're doing 6 sets of 3 at 70%. What are you doing next week? 6 sets of 3 at 70%. What are you doing the week after that? 6 sets of 3 at 70%. What are you doing the week after that? 6 sets of 3 at 80%. Right? Step, 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 boom. That point, step. That is very important. This step loading will weed out the impatient. It's exactly what Pavel Tsatsouline says. And it's incredibly beneficial for the beginner to intermediate weightlifter, because what they're doing is it's like you're falling asleep on weights that, like you're becoming more autonomous on weights that you weren't before. You were, you're in so much more control. You're in so much more of a rhythm. Then we add in weight. Not before that. Not like, I'm kind of used to that. Let's go up and see how it goes. It's like, no, you only go up when you are prepared to go up. Arthur Kopjan, power snatches are generally easier to learn because less mobility is required. But when learning to snatch, would you recommend focusing on to power snatch first, add weight for a cycle, then No. So do not learn the power snatch. It's as simple as that. If you're learning to weightlift, do not learn the power snatch. I can actually say that as an absolute statement. Do not fucking do it. There we go. Arietta Mallow. Hi, Zach. I'm a CrossFitter. Please don't judge for that. Of course I wouldn't judge for that. but I am also thinking about eventually transitioning to only weightlifting. Cool. Currently, I'm training snatch and clean and jerk technique on the weekends. I'm doing high pulls, below the knee snatch exercises that I took from some of your videos. Could you recommend a program to follow in my situation? So 2 or 3 days per week and somewhat beginner level. Yeah, I have a beginner snatch and clean and jerk template. Now, it doesn't have percentages on it. It's 3 days a week. It might be 4 days a week, but I really do think 4 days a week is possible. But those 4 days should be 45 minutes to an hour, especially if you're a CrossFitter. I would recommend that. I would also recommend the base and fitness phase that I just put out. Again, that's 4 days, but it's doable. I would recommend those for sure. Arietta, please do that and continue your CrossFit journey. I have no qualms with CrossFitters. Kuro Campuzano, for a complete beginner who also wants to do some hypertrophy, do you recommend training snatch, clean and jerk separately, plus accessory work at the end of each session, or training snatch and clean and jerk in each session and leaving a day or two for only accessories? Well, complete beginner in weightlifting, you should treat that as like going to soccer practice, right? And then if you want to put on some hypertrophy, do some hypertrophy, going to the gym, right? So those are two separate things, but you would never question the ability to use both of those things. So it depends how fast you want to learn how to snatch and clean and jerk, because if you did want to learn how to do it fast, you would do it every day. Snatch, clean and jerk every single day. Very light weights, practicing the movements, just practicing drilling, practicing moving right. Then what you would think is, okay, weightlifting done. Let me do my bodybuilding stuff. So it's like two different arenas. And then slowly maybe you merge those two together as you get better. But don't overthink it. Like, you just practice weightlifting. Just because it's in the gym doesn't mean that it's a gym sport. It's its own sport. Practice weightlifting the same way you would practice playing soccer or playing golf. Then, if you want to put on a little bro size, you want to put on a little biceps. I have horrible biceps, I know. No issues there. Just go to the gym and do it on another time, you know? Daniel Gottlieb, struggling with the low contact point in the clean. Tried no hook, no contact cleans, but they don't seem to carry over as well. Low contact point in the cleans usually means that you're struggling to get this aspect where you take your hands and bring them in towards you. Hands in towards you. So you can think about your knuckles. They'll go right as you make contact. You'll go boop, boom. And it kind of leads you into this, right? And that's going to allow you to have a nice turnover. If you're like this and you never pull under like that on your cleans, that's when you get really low, and then you have this really janky turnover. It's like mechanical. You might have this reverse curl thing. If you go like this, boom, elbows high and through. Okay, I hope you guys like my thing. Oh, we're over an hour now. Fuck, I feel so bad for somebody. I hope, let me know if you guys make it this far. And maybe there's a different way I can do this. I don't know. I try doing the live version of this and people just don't show up. Obviously, you know, you guys have jobs, you have things that you're doing. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say. That was Daniel. And he's 6'5", so I already like Daniel. Kevin Carrazzo. Hi, Zach. Whenever I squat above 70%, I start to feel a lot of compression on my low back. When I'm doing the sets is the part that gets tired the most. I don't feel my quads. And even when I'm resting between sets, I can feel it in your back. What you can think about, Kevin, is getting the bar slightly lower on the back. So a lot of times people with high bar positioning, they're like way up high. You know, you don't have to be above your traps entirely, so it's digging into your neck. You can bring the bar down a little bit. Secondly, you can't feel your quads. It's like, well, let's first off, as I've said before with the squats, hip crease below the knee. You can try and just sit in an air squat position and learning how to use your quads in that very compromised position. So this is my elbow, but let's just pretend that this is like my hips and this is my quads and that would be my foot. Right? I guess that would make sense. So you would, yes. Oh God, I can't do it without showing you guys. If I pull my knee up here, okay, it's shortened. This, and I'm wearing shorts, so relax. This, the connection through my psoas, basically like my quad, it's shortened. And it's really hard if I go from this position to not just use my hip extension, which would be my back. You would feel it in your back. From this position, in order to push through the quad, it's very difficult. And that's something that I would work on conscientiously, right? Like getting in a goblet position and being able to feel your quad the instant that you drive up from the squat, not at any other time. Things you can think about is, okay, get your hip crease below the knee. Then as you stand, you can think about peeling your knee forward as you squat, right? That's probably something you've never heard. So you hit the bottom position, then as you come up, this would be the knee, and then your toe would be right here, or your foot, right? I'm always holding my shit up like this, but you guys aren't reading my mind. Okay, so this knee, hip crease, knee, and then your foot would be right here. As you're standing up, you can think about pushing the knee forward, pushing it forward. If the knee stays back, what happens to the hip? The hip has to go back. If the hip goes back, what happens to the chest? Chest goes forward. Where does that put pressure? On your low back, on your back. So what you can think is push the knees forward as you stand up. Great question. Jonathan Bennett, do you think it's possible to increase fitness and increase strength when turning 35? Yeah. You want to be better at Muay Thai and increase strength. I absolutely think that's possible. It also depends on your level in both. Like if you're a professional Muay Thai fighter, it's going to be hard to increase your fitness at 35 years old, but you're not. You're probably doing it as a hobby. You can always up everything. You can up your sleep, you can up your nutrition, you can up the amount of time that you spend at the gym. It's definitely possible. Advice for stability in the bottom position of the snatch and also technique for the power jerk. Stability for the bottom position of the snatch is simply going to be like spend time down there. Like take a barbell, spend time down there. Like that was one of my original coaches was like, you need to spend a good hour more in the bottom position of a snatch. Like if you're only hitting it when you catch and stand, like that's just not enough time. Pause in the catch of the snatch, that helps a ton. Overhead squats where you pause at the bottom as low as you can, that helps a ton. I used to catch snatches and pause in the bottom for a minute and then stand. So always work on that. Currently on step loading week 2, back squat numbers are stuck, if not decreasing. Week 1, day 1, RPE felt lighter than week 2. Day 1, RPE 7. This is a lot here. Horace is asking this question. I don't know. Oh, you're plateauing in the squat. I really have to see your technique in the squat and what your judgments of RPE are. So Horace is asking, he's running a lot of different things, and he's plateauing in the squat. What are your goals? Are you squatting just to squat? Are you squatting to get stronger in the squat? Are you squatting to get better at weightlifting? Like, how good are you at weightlifting? I don't know these things. I don't know how you move. Typically, I would find out why. If you were in the room with me and you were squatting, I would know exactly why. And a lot of times, judgment of RPE can be off. And I program squats. Your squat can stay the exact same, and your snatch and clean and jerk can go up. So I'm sorry, that's probably not the answer that you're looking for, but that's how I can. That's the best way I can answer it. Basic progression. John West asks, basic progression for the power clean, power snatch, and overhead press. Great question, John West. I have all of those on video. Go through my YouTube channel. I legitimately have all of those. So yeah, my YouTube channel, I just put out a power clean progression. I have a power snatch progression. I do not have an overhead press progression, but those are easy to come by on YouTube, and the overhead press is a pretty easy movement. Last question is Chris Liu. Advice for a program for those who lost strength during quarantine. Base fitness phase. But yes, it's the same thing. Just build up that strength, move perfectly. But the one that I just put out is the perfect one for you, Chris. That is the final question. An hour and 11 minutes long. I'm so sorry that took so long, but it was 39 questions, guys. I didn't know how else to do this. I really hope you enjoy these. Again, thank you so goddamn much for being a patron of mine. Please let me know, like, comment below, like, different things that you would like to see on Patreon. I have some content I can put up. I don't know what else to do for you guys, but you mean so much to me, and thank you so much.